What's going on, guys? Alex here, coming at you from sunny, beautiful Los Angeles, even though it's about 2 in the morning right now. Anyway, I wanted to hop on here and go through some of the provisions related to that CARES Act that was just passed in Congress that's supposed to help small businesses get through this whole COVID-19 situation. And part of the video is going to actually be going through the process to apply for these emergency loans that have been set forth per those provisions. Now, this is going to be a long video. It's not going to be a quick one. So if you're looking for a 3-minute situation, this is not going to be it. I want to delve into a little bit about where some of the provisions are coming from and go through the loan process so you could see how the streamlined loan process works. And that's the other thing, that they've streamlined the process and they're not really asking for a lot of information anymore for sole proprietors. It's really straightforward and direct in terms of getting the application through. Before, they were asking for a lot of financial statements, business plans, things like that. Now it's a much more straightforward process, and I think that has to do with them wanting to get the money out to businesses as soon as possible and not having them caught up in the bureaucracy and the paperwork of actually applying for loans. And guys, while I'm going through this, if you have questions, drop them in the chat below. I'll try to address those as well. Now, this all stems from the CARES Act that was recently passed. Now, this is a monster of a bill. It's 880 pages. Now, it kind of should make you wonder that Congress usually moves super slow on pretty much everything. How did they manage to get an 880-page bill put together in such a short amount of time? It's kind of mind-boggling. But they managed to put this thing together, and let's just take a look at this beast right here. All right, so here it is in all of its glory, and you can find it on the congress.gov website. I'll drop a link down in the video description for you guys. Actually, I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat. All right, so you can check that out. And obviously, this is a monster thing to get through. And right now, the financial community, the tax community, we're all trying to work out how to make sense of this, because there are so many different provisions. There's money going all sorts of different ways. They really tried to spread the wealth, if you will, all the way from making direct payments to taxpayers. I just made a video about that. There are some loan provisions. There are some loan forgiveness depending on the type of business and the use of the funds. Everything is still up in the air. And anybody who tells you that they've got their mind wrapped around this, I think is crazy. So you're going to hear in this video a lot of it seems like and it looks like. Because right now it's way too early to wrap our minds around this thing. This is going to take some time to work through, to weed through. And typically when there are tax and legal provisions, there's explanatory substantive documentation that's released afterwards. And right now we really don't have that. We're kind of relying on what's been put out there and the little amount of time that we've had to digest all of this. So I talked about the direct payments that are going to be made to individual taxpayers, but this has more of a business flavor, if you will, because the loans that are put out there are really designed for businesses and business owners, especially if you have employees, because what the government is trying to do right now is avoid mass unemployment and really having the economy tumble into the depths, being that nobody's working, nobody's buying anything, and you can have a downward spiral that is created from there. So let's take a look at these provisions. Specifically, I wanted to outline one area which is of interest to my business owner clients, and that is right here. Now let me make this a little bigger for you guys so you could see it. And this page has so much text on it, it's almost crashing my browser. So that is something new right there. Not used to seeing that. Let's get that page back here. All right, here we go. So here's the information about this grant. Before we even delve into this stuff, I want to make very clear. Haven't had time to wrap my mind around this. We're in the midst of tax season, if you will, and even that's kind of up in the air because the deadlines are being all pushed around everywhere. With that said, this is very preliminary I'm not making any recommendations. This is not tax advice, not legal advice. I'm not advising that you apply for the loan. I'm not advising that you don't. But what we're going to do is understand some of these provisions, get an idea of what's out there, and then we're going to run through the streamlined loan process together. That's online right now and available. So you could see what, as a sole proprietor, you'd go through in applying for this coronavirus emergency loan situation. Okay, so I'm not making any recommendations. I'm not telling you to do it, not to do it. It's super early in this thing being passed to be able to advise anybody accordingly. But I have some business owners that have reached out to me and said, look, Alex, if there's help out there, if there's support, then I want to take advantage of it. I don't want to wait and figure out the details and really get to the point where we have all the T's crossed and the I's dotted and everything. I just want to apply for the help if it's out there, and then we'll figure it out later, because if they can get me cash and they can get me cash fast, that's what I care about right now. So this video is really made for those business owners that are saying, hey, I need help. I need it now. Let's cut through the nonsense. Let's apply for it and then see what happens from there. So again, not recommending that you do or don't do anything, but I'm helping you out here by going through some of the important information. So let's take a look at this. This is the part of the bill that has to do with the emergency grant. And it says here, in general, during the covered period, small business concerns, nonprofit organizations, small agricultural cooperatives, and so forth, may request that the administrator provide an advance that is subject to paragraph 3 in the amount requested by such applicant to such applicant within 3 days after the administrator receives an application from such applicant. So what they're saying is that this emergency grant should be provided within 3 days of receiving the application. I don't know how they're going to do that, but that's the language of the bill. Next, verification. Before dispersing amounts under this subsection, the administrator shall verify that the applicant is an eligible entity by accepting a self-certification from the applicant under penalty of perjury, subject to section what have you. The amount of an advance provided under this subsection shall be not more than $10,000. Now, we don't know if that means $500. We don't know if that means $5,000, but it sounds like it's not going to be more than $10,000. How they're going to determine that amount is anybody's guess, but it's kind of interesting in that this is sort of immediate cash that can be made available, it sounds like, and a lot of businesses are struggling and they need it right now. That's why I zoomed in on this section for you guys, because it's important. Use of funds. An advance provided under the subsection may be used to address any allowable purpose for a loan made under section 7B2, including providing paid sick leave for employees unable to work due to the direct effect of COVID-19. How you prove that exactly, I'm not sure, but it's there. Maintaining payroll to retain employees during business disruptions or substantial slowdowns. Meeting increased costs to obtain materials unavailable from the applicant's original source due to interrupted supply chains. Making rent or mortgage payments, and repaying obligations that cannot be met due to revenue losses. Okay, so they're outlining the possible uses of this amount that could be up to $10,000 that should be made, from what we're reading here, made available within 3 days of the date of application. It would kind of blow my mind if that happens, but this is what it is. Now, repayment. An applicant shall not be required to repay any amounts of an advance provided under this subsection, even if subsequently denied a loan under section 7B2. Okay, so what they're saying is that if you apply for a loan and you also apply for this advance, even if you're denied for the loan, you could still get this advance of up to $10,000, and which we'll get into a little bit more in a second here. So shall not be required to repay any amounts of the advance under the subsection. So basically, what they're saying is you get this, let's say it's $10,000. I'm not saying that it is, but let's say that happens. And you use those funds for any of these purposes that I've highlighted here, then based on what I'm reading, this could be a misinterpretation, but they may be saying here that if you use it for these purposes, you're basically getting a grant that you don't have to pay back. The question I have as a tax professional is this grant taxable, or is it not? One way to look at it is if it's even if it is taxable, you get $10,000 taxable, then if you spend it on qualifying business expenses, those expenses should offset the taxable amount if it is taxable. But then again, your net income should still increase by the grant amount, whereby it would not ordinarily. So there could be a tax effect here, it could not be. It's too early to really tell at this point, but this advance, since it's designed to put money into the hands of business owners as soon as possible, I thought was an important section to outline of this bill. Now, there's 879 other pages that could be applicable as well, but this part I did want to outline in detail. So in terms of the application itself, now one downside of sort of government small business loans is that the amount of documentation they require is extreme. You know, the financial statements, the business plans, the projections, and so forth. A lot of small business owners, I'll be honest with you, their financial statements are a disaster, and they don't even have a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet for tax preparation purposes, much less ready for a loan application. With that, the way that this was set up originally is when you went to apply for this loan, you were met with this screen on the SBA website, and it's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Assistance. And it tells you all of the applicable documents here that would be required. And it gives you a link to upload those documents. Okay, right here on the website. And it even gave you an option to mail your documents in on paper. And I found this guide online here, also looks like from the SBA, regarding the application process. And that includes some more details in that you have to start with this form right here, and there's a good amount of information that they're requesting there. On top of that, they're looking for the IRS form 4506T, which allows them to get transcripts on your behalf to get your tax information. For the applicant principals and affiliates, they want complete copies of recent income tax returns, schedule of liabilities, personal financial statements. Let me make this a little more visible for you guys. Okay, so they want personal financial statements and so forth. So one thing that can stop the flow of funds in a situation like this is if business owners get bogged down with all of this documentation, all this information that they're requesting. Now, here's the interesting part. There are some business owners I know that started this process and they were getting all their information put together and so forth, and they got to the point where the website was crashing and they couldn't really enter their info and they couldn't complete the process. Then they went back to the website and they found a streamlined application process for this economic injury disaster loan assistance that they didn't see before. And the process was totally different. Now, I'm not sure why it's changed, but it looks like they've streamlined it to make it even easier and simpler for businesses to apply for this assistance, to not have to wait for the money to get injected into the system. So here's what I did. I went to good old Google. I typed in COVID SBA loan, and I clicked on this link right here. Okay. Now, this is the website. That is the SBA website that describes some of the benefits that are available, which we're going to go through right now. Let me put this link in the chat for you guys. So let's take a look at this, because this gives, I think, a nice summary of some of the available benefits here. The SBA's economic injury disaster loans offer up to $2 million in assistance and can provide vital economic support to small businesses to overcome the temporary loss of revenue they are experiencing. Okay, up to $2 million in assistance. These loans may be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that can't be paid because of the disaster's impact. The interest rate is 3.75% for small businesses. The interest rate for nonprofits is 2.75%. Now, one thing I'm hearing from a lot of my business owner clients is they say, it's great, but this should be a grant, not a loan, right? Right now, a loan is basically kicking the can down the road. I don't have customers now. I don't have revenue right now. So how am I supposed to then take a loan and start paying it back based on this lack of revenue and customers? It's a good question. But this is what we're confronted with. This is why I outlined the $10,000 grant that was shown in the language of the bill itself. That can provide some relief. So for some business owners, that's a drop in the bucket. Up to $10,000 doesn't really change anything. But I figured I'd mention that because it's important and could make a difference for some of the businesses out there. But these are the interest rates that are involved. 3.75% for small businesses. The interest rate for nonprofits is 2.75%. Now, it's not a grant. It's not an interest-free loan. But I can say it's pretty cheap financing relatively, because if business owners have the alternative of putting the amounts that they have due on credit cards, that could be a lot worse. Okay, the interest rate for that could be 10 times higher. So at least they're providing some relief. Obviously, some people would want to see a higher level of grants, but this is what we have. The SBA offers loans with long-term repayments in order to keep payments affordable up to a maximum of 30 years. Terms are determined on a case-by-case basis based on each borrower's ability to pay. And I think those are the important provisions here. Now, there's also an advance loan that they're referring to, and I believe this is the same $10,000 that we were talking about in the bill. But it says, in response to the coronavirus pandemic, small business owners in all U.S. states, Washington, D.C., and territories are eligible to apply for an economic injury disaster advance of up to $10,000. This advance will provide economic relief to businesses that are currently experiencing a temporary loss of revenue. Funds will be made available within 3 days of a successful application. This loan advance will not have to be repaid. So I'm fairly confident that this language is referring to this portion of the bill that we went over, and they're saying that it's going to be within 3 days. We'll see, but that's the idea. So from this website, the interesting thing is back to the application process. Now, I showed you guys the page that came up before when business owners went to apply for this relief. That is the one you're seeing right now. But on this site, you see this banner at the top, and it says that if you want to apply for the disaster loan, click here. And notice, on this site, this is the Streamlined Process requirements. So this is a different site than my clients were seeing a little while ago, because they were basically working with this. And as you can see, there are onerous set of requirements here that will slow down the process for anyone trying to get through this, because now you got to supply all this tax information and so forth. Here, it looks like they've alleviated a lot of the requirements. Now, I could be way off with this, but this is what I'm seeing. And I'm going to run through this streamlined process with you step by step so you can see what it entails. It's not very scary at all. It's actually pretty straightforward. So let's take a look at what this says. SBA is collecting the requested information in order to make a loan under SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program to the qualified entities listed in this application that are impacted by the coronavirus. The information will be used in determining whether the applicant is eligible for an economic injury loan. If you do not submit all the information requested, your loan cannot be processed. The applicant understands that the SBA is relying upon the self-certifications contained in this application to verify that the applicant is an eligible entity to receive the advance, and that the applicant is providing self-certification under penalty of perjury. The estimated time for completing this entire application is 2 hours and 10 minutes. I can tell you it's going to be a lot shorter than that. Although you may not need to complete all parts. You are not required to respond to this collection of information unless it displays a valid OMB, whatever. Okay. The interesting thing is, again, the lack of information and documentation that they're requesting. Now, some might say, look, this is a complete mess right now, and they're just doing whatever they can to get the applications and get the money out some way or another, and then they're going to figure it out later. That may very well be what we're seeing here, in that the process looks to have been streamlined from what it was prior, where they were requesting actual documentation, information. Here, it looks like what Ray Dalio would refer to as helicopter money, to just go in and grab it, and please don't shut down your business because we want to get through this thing with the economy in one piece. So let's work through this, and I'm going to try to make this a little bit more visible for you guys. Now, Eligible entity verification. Let's take a look. We have to choose one. Asks, applicant is a business with not more than 500 employees. Applicant is an individual who operates under a sole proprietorship with or without employees or as an independent contractor. So the language here is actually really important, and I'm going to show you why in a second. But we're going to choose that for now because this video from the very beginning is for sole proprietors specifically. So let's choose that. Let's look at the other options though. Applicant is a cooperative with not more than 500 employees. Applicant is an employee stock ownership plan. Applicant is a tribal small business concern. Applicant is a business including agricultural cooperative, aquaculture enterprise, so forth. And the applicant is a private nonprofit organization. And also they have applicant is a business with more than 500 employees that is small under SBA size standards. Okay, so wide range of different businesses. We're going to choose applicant is an individual who operates as a sole proprietor. And let's make this more visible for you guys. And moving through here, it says review and check all of the following. So let's take a look. Applicant must review and check all of the following. If applicant is unable to check all the following, applicant is not an eligible entity. Okay, let's take a look. Applicant is not engaged in any illegal activity as defined by federal guidelines. So quite frankly, some of you marijuana businesses, you need to take a look at this very closely. You may not be eligible given the fact that marijuana is still illegal at the federal level. I'm not making any comment as to right or wrong. What I'm saying is they don't want any illegal activity, and it would seem to me that that would include marijuana businesses. Again, I'm not an attorney. Consult with your attorney on that and see if you qualify for this or not. Next, no principal of the applicant with a 50% or greater ownership interest is more than 60 days delinquent on child support obligations. Okay, so they're linking that in. All right. Applicant is not an agricultural enterprise, example, farm, other than an aquaculture enterprise, agriculture cooperative, or nursery. Okay, I don't know what some of those are, but we're going to check it. Applicant does not present live concerts of a prurient sexual nature or derive directly or indirectly more than de minimis gross revenue through the sale of products or services or the presentation or of any depictions or displays of a prurient sexual nature. That's 2 times in my life I've used the word prurient. That's the 3rd time. Learn new things all the time. Anyway, let's check that one. Applicant does not derive more than 1/3 of gross annual revenue from legal gambling activities. Interesting. So they're kind of hitting at even legal gambling activities here. All right, let's check that. Applicant is not in the business of lobbying. Nope. Applicant cannot be a state, local, or municipal government entity and cannot be a member of Congress. Last time I checked, not a member of Congress. We're good. All right, so you check all these things off here. You check the one here. You're good to rock and roll to the next step. Obviously, I'm not going to submit this application. We're just going to run through here. All right, so the EIN you put here. Okay, so let's get that in the right format. Again, this is all nonsense information for now. Here you'll choose the type of entity. So this would be, if we're a sole proprietor, boom, this could be a DBA right here. Now, next step is the application a nonprofit organization? We'll click no. Is the applicant a franchise? Click no if that's not applicable. Here's the interesting part. Gross revenue for the 12-month period prior to the date of the disaster, which is considered January 31st, 2020. You got to be careful here, guys, because a lot of business owners have a calendar year that they use for tax reporting, financial reporting, what have you, and their year end is December 31st, 2019. That's not going to work. They want 12 months ended January 31st, 2020. So you want to run profit and loss or P&L from January 31st, 2019 to January 31st, 2020 for these purposes and get the gross revenue, meaning that's all of the money that you received for the business in that time. Don't just use your January 1st to December 31st numbers. That's not what they're looking for here. They want to be specific, and that's the 12 months starting with January 31st, 2019 to January 31st, 2020. That is going to be the time period that they want. And technically, this should be February 1st 2019, January 31st, 2020. That would make even more sense. So let's just put a number here. Okay, let's pretend it's going to be 100,000. Cost of goods sold for the same time period. Okay, so if you're a service business, you typically would not expect to have cost of goods sold. However, if you have products that you sell, then this is where you'd put the cost of the products that you sold throughout that specific time period. Don't rely on your financials from December 31st. All right, so let's take a look here. Rental properties, residential and commercial only, lost rents due to the disaster. So if you suffered in that respect, that's where you'd put those numbers. Not required for purposes of this application. Not profit cost of operation for the 12 months prior to the date of the disaster, which is again January 31st. Combined annual operating expenses for the 12 months prior to the date of the disaster for all secular social services provided by the faith-based entity. It's getting harder to speak for some reason. List the secular social services provided by the faith-based entity, compensation from other sources received as a result of the disaster. So if you received any other grants or benefits, you want to put those in here. And the question is, does business interruption insurance play into that? I don't quite know. So that's something, if you did receive it, you may want to consider that as well. And a brief description of other compensation sources. Again, that may play into it. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, Smith Street. We're going to do in Smithtown. And we're going to pretend that's in North Carolina, county of all right, and then the zip code. Okay, and the business phone. All right, business email. Right, date business established, fairly straightforward. Current ownership since, so if there was an ownership change since the data was established, you want to note it there. It'll be the same. Business activity, here's where you get a little bit more specific with regard to what you're doing. Let's just pick something random right here. And number of employees, this is interesting because for sole proprietor, you're paying self-employment taxes on your income. So are you considered an employee, or are you considered as not having employees if you don't employ another person? So back at the beginning of this whole thing, there was the designation that you're a sole proprietor with or without employees. So I believe that, based on my understanding, you would put 0 here if you don't have any outside employees that you employ. But don't quote me on that. That's just my impression based on this application, how it's structured. So let me then bring this back here. So again, we're just filling everything out pretty straightforward here. The date business established, the current ownership, when did that last change? If it was the same from the beginning, you'd note that. Business activity, detailed business activity, and the number of employees. All right, so as we move through the process, we're in this third circle here. And this is the owner information. Again, let me see if it's going to autofill all my stuff here. Okay, all right, we got rid of that. So, all right, we got mobile phone. Okay, title. Bam. Here are the choices, by the way. You got manager, accountant, CEO, CFO, COO, and other. Ownership percentage. If you own the whole shebang, you put 100. Email. All right. Social Security. Okay. Birth date. Whoop. It's back there. All right. Okay. Place of birth, North Carolina. Are you a U.S. citizen? Let's say yes. Residential street address. Didn't we just put this information here? Smith Street, city of Smithtown. We got North Carolina, and the zip code is, let's say that. All right, so you have the ability to add additional owners as well. If you're a sole proprietor, that would not apply, so you wouldn't put anything there. All right, so again, is your business owned by business entity? Well, we almost missed that question. And generally that would be no, but if it's applicable, then you want to put that in. What happens if we click yes? Okay. It expands and there's a business applicant parent entity information here. It wants the legal name, street address, business phone. Okay. If the business applicant is owned by a business entity, that business entity must provide information as part of this application and sign a guarantee. Okay. All right. Interesting. So let's leave that at no for now. Okay. So right now we're at the third circle. We're going to move to the fourth. All right. Now it asks us some additional information. We're at the fourth step of this process, so really we're pretty much done. Okay, in the past year, has the business or a listed owner been convicted of a criminal offense committed during and in connection with a riot or civil disorder or other declared disaster, or ever been engaged in the production or distribution of any product or service that has been determined to be obscene by a court of competent jurisdiction? God, I gotta love it. Congress has to throw this stuff into everything. We're going to hit no. Is the applicant or any listed owner currently suspended or debarred from contracting with the federal government or receiving federal grants or loans? Let's say no. Are you presently subject to this is a multi-parter. Are you presently subject to an indictment, criminal information, arraignment, or other means by which formal criminal charges are brought in any jurisdiction? B, have you been arrested in the past 6 months for any criminal offense? Okay. C, for any criminal offense other than minor vehicle violations, have you ever been convicted, pled guilty, pled nolo contendere, I think, been placed on pretrial diversion, or been placed on any form of parole or probation, including probation before judgment? Okay, I don't know what a lot of those things mean, but sounds like to me they wouldn't apply. And if anyone assisted you in completing this application, whether you pay a fee for the service or not, this person must enter their information below. Not required, but if it's applicable, you want to enter that information there. I give permission for SBA to discuss any portion of this application with the representative listed above. So if you want that to be the case, you check it off there. Now, this is an important checkbox. I would like to be considered for an advance of up to $10,000. Now, this is the advance that we talked about all the way in the beginning. And there are some people that went through this application before it was streamlined and they did not see that part. Now it's been integrated into the application. So I think they've had an opportunity to update this whole thing to where if you want to be considered for that $10,000, here's where you check that off. All right. And in terms of where to send funds, let's just say Chase for now, account number. Let's give it an account number there. It likes that. And these bars are turning green, as you can see, to indicate that we're good with the inputs. Let's just enter something random for now. And ultimately, you check off this bad boy right here. And for the most part, that's the application. It takes about 10 minutes. Now you click next. Of course, we're not going to submit this application. We're at the last step here. If you would, you click this capture verification, then you click submit. We're not going to do that. But it summarizes all of the information that you've entered so far. Make sure it's accurate. You may want to print this page out to a PDF. Make sure that you have a record of what was applied for. And then once you click submit, you're going to get a confirmation number. That you definitely need to save. Print it to a PDF, save it, take a picture of it, what have you. Because if you need to reference this thing later on, that's how you're going to be able to do it. So that's the process. Nowhere throughout this whole thing did they ask us for financial statements. Nowhere throughout this thing did it ask us for tax returns or even the 4506T to allow them to get our tax information. No projected financials were required. No business plan was required. So I'm a bit at a loss as to why this process is as simple as it is. I think it has to do with the fact that they've streamlined the application to allow for quick and efficient processing of these things and not to have this program held up in the bureaucracy of it all. So again, I'm not providing advice as to whether you should or shouldn't apply or what you should do or what you shouldn't do. I'm saying that here's the application. If you feel that this is possibly beneficial for you, that's how you can get through the new streamlined app. And I'm going to put the websites into the video description for you guys so you can take a look at them yourselves and see what you want to do and how you want to get through the process. But it's a lot simpler than I imagined it to be. I thought it was going to be a lot more onerous in terms of, okay, well, upload your financial documents and so forth, and that could get kind of annoying in and of itself. But there it is. That's the process. That's what I wanted to show you guys. Ultimately, we're still all figuring out how this thing is playing out and where things are ending up. Right now, a lot of this is in the air and not finalized and not concrete. But to the business owners that I know that are saying, hey, I need relief, I need it now. If this is the application, let's do it, and then figure out what happens afterwards because they need the cash as soon as possible. That's how you can possibly approach this whole thing. Everybody wishes it was more organized. Everybody wishes there was more structure to this thing, more clarity as to what's available, what's not, who's going to be helped, when the funds are going to come through, and what is going to need to be paid back, what is not going to need to be paid back, what is taxable income, what's not taxable income, and exactly how this is all going to get reconciled in the end, because it looks like a huge mess right now. And really, it seems like a lot of last-minute decisions are being made, and even this application process, I mean, if taxpayers are going to receive funds within 3 days, I would be honestly blown away. But I've seen stranger things, all right? So we all have to remain positive in all of this craziness. Again, we make do with what we have, and ultimately, you should probably plan to have some very interesting months coming up. If this can provide some relief for you, then hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you did receive some value out of this, feel free to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that bell icon to be notified of future videos as soon as they're released, because there will be more content coming, I can promise you that. So with that, hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for watching.